I don't think a lot of people go through and be like, hey, you know what? I think I've got to take a look at my values. Some things in my life aren't quite going the way I would like them to go. I need to take a look at them myself and see what I'm, vibrating out there in my reality. We talked last week about the stones, the pebbles that we're throwing in of the still pond of life, and the ripple effects are the experiences that we have. So these questions are really simple. And I think the complexity is what the ego tries to create, but it's really not complex. I mean, let's face it, we can't move into love when we have fear. We can't move into forgiveness when we have judgment. We can't move into the infinite when we feel finite.
Ultimately, it starts with yourself. If you want
Oh,
to from others, then always comes back. Okay, that means I'm obviously I need to love myself more, and how can I open up to that? And that's those are the beautiful questions. I think half the time it's just asking the question, right? Like you said, you read this in a book, and then here we are digesting it over a podcast, and I'm sure you were marinating in that for a while. And its questions are arguably as important, if not more important, than the answer sometimes, right?
absolutely. And I I think that this is what makes life so enjoyable. That we can stop and sit and think. I mean, I have a practice that I do every morning, and it's a commitment that I've made to myself that for 5 minutes every morning, and I just sip my tea while I sit in a chair. I just let my mind wander. And the way that I don't go down some kind of crazy rabbit hole is I listen to trying to discern the faintest noise that I can hear. Maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's 10 minutes. And I just sip my tea. I'm like, oh, I can hear that bird. Oh, I can hear a different bird. Oh, I can hear maybe there's a lawnmower going in the backyard. I mean, like there's all kinds of things. I can hear the wind. I can hear the drops of rain on the window pane. Going back to that level of simplicity, that I think is self-love. I mean, maybe as the listener is saying, look, you guys can talk all of it. And this is the part that you and I really wanted to get out of this podcast is that this isn't just about um, a philosophical conversation about love and self awareness and higher consciousness. It's how do we do that? The hows. And just asking yourself a question and taking the time to sit and let the answers surface through sitting for 10 minutes, 5 minutes every morning. See what happens. That's self love, I think.
Yeah, it's taking that time and that intention to be with yourself, regardless of your situation, whether you got a busy house with a full family going on, or you live on your own, or something in between. It, in a way, it doesn't matter what the circumstances are, because in this sense they kind of become, I won't say excuses, but they can usually come into that realm where you're always taking yourself away from yourself. You're putting yourself now into, well, I've got my work stuff or I've got my family stuff, and of course you still have that. And we're talking just 5 to 10 minutes, but I remember when I was working in the corporate land for a bit, and days were just so busy, and 5 minutes was even hard for me to put aside for myself. But once you start to understand that no matter what, you are still the most important thing in your life. And ironically, or interestingly enough, when you start to put that extra 5 to 10 minutes a day just for yourself, the things that you wanted to have happen, and the things that you wanted to potentially improve in your life, they end up likely improving and happening because you're giving yourself that extra bit of time. The interesting thing is you're actually more productive when you take time away from your busy day to just to sit, just to contemplate. I mean, when you're talking about your your 5 to 10 minutes of silence and contemplation in the morning. I have done, I mean, I meditate, but then and I'll do yoga in the morning and I have my own routine, but I totally stole that idea from you. And I was, in the last couple of days, I've been just sitting with my coffee and just, I've actually moved my chair so that I'm looking out the window and I can see the mountains here where I live in Vancouver. And I'm taking full advantage of what my view is, and just have my window open a little bit, can hear the birds, can hear the neighborhood, and just to sit and just to be in my own thoughts is it's really beautiful. So that's a nice little takeaway that even I took out from our conversation. That's what the listener and the audience can do here, is there's such simple, actionable steps that we can start to take in that direction of self-love.
Yeah. What you were saying reminded me of taking that question and adding one word to it. And do I value receiving self-love? The majority of people would probably, their immediate answer would be like, no, because where are we taught how to love ourselves? It's a phrase that we hear all the time in this new mindfulness movement. But to actually love thyself is where I think you and I are passionately dedicated to getting that kind of information out into the world. Because I think we've been taught that it's all wrong. It's like backwards. We cannot love another unless we love ourselves. And I don't think that we're taught how to love ourselves. So just those 5 minutes are priceless. They're priceless. And, I have a separate spiritual practice, on top of that. But I just get up earlier, right? I mean, I know what it's like to be so busy too. I mean, we all have such crazy busy lives, and there's a lot of listeners who've got kids and, spouse and, or partner or whatever. I mean, there's like crazy stuff going on in the morning, getting the kids ready for school, whatever, daycare, that. I would get myself up in a crazy early hour, just so I had a little alone time. Right? Even if it was 15 minutes before the rest of the household got up in the morning, that was my sacred private space. And that's to have that healthy boundary that listeners can decide that that is a healthy boundary that they're going to hold, and that their family, in honor of them, to give them that space. That's another thing, is to ask for that boundaries, ask for that honoring.